Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. As-salatu was-salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. In the name of God, the most merciful, the most benevolent. May peace and blessings of Allah Almighty be upon the Prophet Muhammad, his noble family and noble companions. Today we are being led in a conversation by our dear brother Andrew, the Greek freak, who is going to guide us a little bit through a conversation about consciousness, right? Human consciousness. How does that relate to our Islamic framework of understanding, and how does the consciousness frame work, right? So we're going to have a very interesting discussion because I think, we have to move with the times, basically. In the West especially, people have adopted certain terminology to describe reality. And I think we as Muslims need to present Islam to them in a way that is coherent with those terms. That way I think we bring people closer to Allah. Now Andrew here converted to Islam about 5-6 months ago. He's very familiar, he's a deep thinker, he's been thinking about this stuff for a very long time. So today we're going to kind of have him be the Amir of this podcast.
So what I've learned is in Islam, intention is very important. And when you say that, like, truly intention goes very deep. I wanted to speak about how labeling something can completely throw off someone's intention. I like to say consciousness. Labeling something will throw off someone's consciousness.
What do you mean by consciousness?
It's very simple. I'll make it very simple. If you're conscious, you just think a little bit. And if you're unconscious, you don't think. You're going to see later in the podcast how I break this down even more. But that's truly all it is. If you're unconscious, you don't think. If you're conscious, you do think. There's a lot of people out there, especially in the Balkans, definitely in some other regions, where nationalism is very strong. And if you were just to think maybe 3 steps ahead of some nationalistic ideologies, you would be right out of that loop. Nationalism would not apply to you. So it just shows me that some people just aren't thinking. Some people just don't go past 3 steps of thinking. So I want to start with how labels will lower your consciousness.
Okay, before we jump into that.
Okay.
What do you mean by labels? Because people think labels, they think like a tag on a food item, What do you mean by labels? How does that relate?
I'll try to explain it the best way I can. When you have a complex situation, let's take trees for example. Trees are millions of years of evolution. You can break a tree down in a million different ways, but we call it a tree to understand it. Trees are a simple label for complex living systems with millions of years of evolution. So when I mean labels, we're trying to apply an understanding to a subject that has a lot of context to it. That's what I mean by labels.
So essentially, naming something.
Naming something.
Right?
And naming something why I think this is a negative is it can be a positive, but it's mainly used in negative. Because the moment you label something, you throw off the intention of it completely.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but to kind of just push back a little bit, we have to label stuff. That's the definition of language, right? You have to give something an attribute or understanding, as you said, in order to be able to communicate simply what you're talking about, your ideas, your thoughts, your references, everything. They need labels,
yes.
Right?
No, I agree to a certain degree. To a certain degree, you need a label to maybe understand something. But hopefully, with me, I can add some context in the situation so we can understand when to maybe not label something and when to label something, which I think is very important. So I'm going to start with this. I'm going to start with when you label someone. So let's say I'm Greek. I grew up with Greek and Turkish hate, and the labels are very hard. When it comes to that region, that Balkan region, everyone likes to label themselves as something because they have such pride in their past, they have such pride in their country. When you label someone, you're freezing them into a snapshot of being ignorant to all context. You're labeling into a snapshot, being ignorant to all intention and all complexity. You go from being a fluid person experiencing everything into someone that pushes your mindset into past events. So labeling something pushes you from being present into the past.
So you're boxing your consciousness.
You're boxing your consciousness into a framework that pushes you into past context, taking you out of present context.
And that can materialize in forms of nationalism, dogmatism, xenophobia,
idolatry.
Idolatry, right? So essentially, what you're saying is limiting your worldview.
Limiting your worldview. Completely.
Right?
So, I'm going to break this down then. Confirmation bias. You only see what's inside of your framework. Everything else is blacked out. Your framework is pretty much your labels. The things you label as as you understand. So if that's your framework, you see everything within your labels. How this is a limitation? Because people like to internalize. We're pattern-based creatures. So the labeled person will now internalize their confirmation biases, and they start identifying with these labels. This is where you get nationalism from, when you start identifying with these labels. And that's where the dehumanization process comes in. Once you label something, it's really easy just to disregard it. The uniqueness of it,
the complexity of things,
the complexity, it's super easy just to disregard it and get rid of all the complexity.
So this is where hate and shaitan gets room to operate, right? Because when people limit their framework of thinking, when they label themselves into something, or they label a situation into something, or they label a people into something,
yes,
then that gives room to shaitan, to demonic forces, to come and instigate or interpret in malicious ways. So this is where hate potentially can be inserted, for example.
Because now you're thinking of a context and past events. Truly, if you want to become a negative person, put yourself in past loop, constantly think about past events. Constantly think about past events. Events that you can't change. It's thinking about things you don't have power over. This is why labeling is bad, because the one thing you do have power over is what you think. And now all you think about is something you can't change, which is the past. And that's what labeling does to the human consciousness. This is why I think labeling something is a negative thing to a certain degree.
Yeah, any thoughts?
I want to add, in terms of the danger of labels, that because I come from more of like a psychology degree background, and it's interesting to hear your guys' definition of consciousness, because that's something that we haven't really defined yet in the science realm, right? I would say, like, in terms of labels, they hold weight if you allow them to hold weight. One example of this is when the Prophet ﷺ was giving da'wah initially in Mecca. And he, at this point, was going more public with it. And the higher echelon of Quraysh essentially surrounded the Rasul ﷺ and started pelting him with stones and essentially started berating him and assaulting him and his followers. So his followers at this point formed a circle around him. And who came riding in on his horse? Hamza radiallahu anh, the uncle of Rasulullah, who nobody wanted beef with.
Right, tough guy.
And, as we all know, the story goes, when Hamza confronts these elites that were labeling the Rasul ﷺ what?
Sorcerer,
he's a sorcerer and he's a liar.
Yeah.
Hamza struck him with his bow and said, "Fight me if you dare." Because we all know that he is not a liar. And so the Rasul ﷺ stood firm on his message. He didn't let the labels affect him, right?
It's because perception is reality.
Exactly.
Perception is what people perceive collectively together and they agree is what becomes reality.
Exactly.
Would you agree with that?
Well, I would push back a little bit.
In a way.
I think reality is manifest by God Almighty, right? I think reality is God allowing you to perceive. But whether you are in or out of perception, it doesn't matter, because He is the always perceiving.
I agree with that.
Right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So He is. Right?
But right-
He is.
Right now, you see a lot of people with their perceptions acting as if that's reality, because everybody around them simply just believes it, and they don't have anyone pushing back against it.
That's the poison, right? It's acting like your perception is your reality. And that's a form of labeling, by the way.
That's-
Boxing yourself in.
Yes.
Validating your own personal
You
experience
feed the
over.
ego. You feed the ego.
Exactly.
Yes.
This claim that your personal experience, your struggles, are more worth and more challenging than everybody else's, without reflecting deeper into the collective human experience. Everybody, for example, has struggles. Everybody has challenges.
Experiences
right?
things in a very similar.
And we all live very similar lives. This is why in Islamic tasawwuf, Sufism, it is a core principle not to judge people based on the outward of what you see.
Based on the label.
Right? Based on the label of what you... Why?
Yeah.
Why? Because you do not know, number one, the internal struggle of a person. Number two, you do not know the end state of yourself or of that person or individual. There's a famous story of Saint Abdul Qadir al-Jailani, right? This famous Sufi Shaykh, master saint, right? He's walking down the market with his student, and there's a drunkard who calls out to him. And he says, Ya Abdul Qadir, can he or can he not? And he says, he can. Keeps walking. So the drunkard calls him, Oh Abdul Qadir, can he or can he not?
Yeah.
He says, he can. He says, Oh Abdul Qadir, a third time. Can he or can he not? And Abdul Qadir says, he can. And he begins crying. And they walk, and now his student is curious of this entire interaction. He says, my teacher, what was he asking you? So he said, the first question, he said, Oh Abdul Qadir, can he take me from this low state and make me better? The drunkard, right? He's saying, can God take me from this state I'm currently in and rectify me? And Abdul Qadir said, he can, right? Then he said, can he take me and make me a saint? And he said, of course, he can. And the third question, he said, I cried, because he said, can he take me and put me in your place, and take you and put you in my place? And he said, he can. And that's why he cried, because our state in this world is uncertain, right? Especially towards the end of days. The Prophet ﷺ tells us that people will go to bed believers and wake up disbelievers. Or they'll wake up believers and go to bed disbelievers, because their consciousness is being bombarded with so much perceived reality, right? From other, so much negative labels and energy from other people, that it is shifting your own state of belief.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned this, because post 9/11, obviously as Muslims growing up, you lived in this shell of essentially the perception that every Muslim is going to do a 9/11, right? And the fear was that Islam is going to be, crushed in the West, and we are never going to be able to practice religion freely, etc., etc. And in reality, given the negative media that was being pushed about Islam post 9/11, it actually led to a huge amount of influx of converts to the religion. So these people were asked, they were like, oh, well, why did you convert? Did you convert because of the attacks? Oh, do you like that kind of stuff? So essentially, media and people were placing this labeling on
the religion.
This, right. Again, this preconceived notion, like, oh, one individual or a few handful of individual did this, thus they are representative of the whole of that society. When in reality, it led people to question, oh, well, what is this about? what is this religion about? They took the ego out of it, and then they ended up embracing Islam. Why? Because they were unshackled from the reality and the prison that, again, these labels wish to go and box us into. 100%.
Go ahead. Are you done?
No, yeah. I want you to, like,
Okay.
what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, labeling is negative. We all understand this. How can we? What's like the fix to this? How do we steer away from this? What's the opposite?
Self-confidence and education.
Well, I want to hear your thoughts
On what you think?
on what you think the antidote to
Labeling.
that is, right?
I think if you were to just focus less on the past and more on just what's in front of you, truly, if you were just to take in an experience and just experience it for what it is and not with the labels that you have in your brain, is definitely the first step you should take into, if you do think you use labels, to getting out of it. Is just to start taking things on is how it is. That's definitely the first thing you need to do. Second, probably cut out either try to help your friends, or if they don't want to get out of like a labeling phase, then you just must leave, because energy is sticky. If you have people around you that are constantly labeling everything and using everything in a negative way, that's going to breed onto you. So first of all, start to focus more on in front of you, not what's behind you in the past, and then the people around you as well. That's at least how I would go about it. First steps. What would you do after?
Well, I think education is key. You know,
In what way? Education in what, right? 'Cause
in whatever you're pursuing, whatever individuals are telling you not to look into, right? Again, the first commandment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is iqra, right? To read.
First time, right?
So
when you said commandment, I thought of like the laws of Moses.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like-
thou shalt not kill.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
I was like,
technically,
what?
this is true. Islamically speaking, the first word uttered in Revelation was Iqra, right? And so obviously there's a lot of discussion that can be had about just that one particular word, right? But how I internalize it is gain knowledge. Don't be superficial. Look more into things. It essentially requires you to be a scientist, to question things. Not to question it so far to where you essentially put yourself in limbo, but more so to the point where you have structure in terms of your questioning. I think Andrew brought up a good point, which is also you need to surround yourself with good friends.
It's a very important factor.
What we're building here, subhanAllah. I always emphasize this in a lot of the previous podcasts. Yadullah ma'a jama'ah. God is with those who congregate, right? So if you surround yourself with high vibrational individuals, and you yourself may be in this low vibrational setting, do you think that you're going to stay low vibrational for very long?
You're going to elevate,
Yeah, either you're going to bring everybody else down, or essentially if you're surrounded by good people, they will bring you up.
Subhanallah, this is reinforced by Qur'an and Hadith. First and foremost, Allah encourages good companionship, and there's an ayah that I will paraphrase that says, on the Day of Judgment, Allah will show you your deeds as a product of the influence of the people around you, and you will say, "Oh, how I wish I had chosen better people. Oh, how I wish I was around better friends."
That's scary.
This is a direct projection into the future that Allah
scary.
is giving you. That He's going to be talking to individuals who actively chose bad companionship and regret and say, "Oh, how I wish I could go back and redo that and just not be around those people."
Big factor.
And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he says, you are either among the influencers or the influenced, right? In a group of people, in an interaction, whatever it is. You are either the influencer or the influenced. You cannot influence everybody. That's something that you as a human being have to accept.
You people, if they want to learn something, they have to come to you. You can't force anything on them.
And I would add that there's times that you have to evaluate who you're around, because you might be the one being influenced, and that influence is not necessarily the best type that you want for yourself. So you have to be really careful. And I do believe, by the way, in this idea of assessing energy, assessing the vibration, the energy that people project, right? Your gut feeling, your firasa, your intuition can tell you a lot about
What's that
people.
word we were saying later? You just know.
Fitra.
Fitra.
Your predisposition, right? Your internal predisposition as a human being. But I would say that, so that's a key factor. Companionship is a big antidote.
Yeah, 100%.
I think we've all experienced being in rotten companionships and being in blessed companionships, right? I agree with the education aspect. I agree with the points you guys made. I would say, to kind of tie that together, you cannot have the antidote to labeling and to boxing in until you connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes. Then you understand that He is the source.
If it's not rooted to Him, it's depleting. He is
correct.
He is infinite. Everything else is depleting.
Bingo. You attach anything to finite sources, they will be destructive. The moment you attach to the infinite, the everlasting, the self-sustaining, everything falls into place. Right? I think that's the last piece to bring it. That's the antidote, in my opinion.
We could end the podcast right there.
Well, I think the moment you bring God objectively into the equation, not God as a label, because people label God too.
They
right?
label it, and then once you label it, your understandings of it are limited to maybe like 2 or 3 things.
So they label God in such a way.
I agree.
You're absolutely correct.
100%.
They will say God is only my God.
What does that even mean?
People like to take ownership of God, man. This is something really weird I've noticed, especially like political, religious dogmatism. It's taking ownership of God. I mean, like this thinking, they might not even have to say it, but this thinking that this is my God.
It's limiting infinity.
He serves me.
Limiting
He serves
his infinity.
my. Yeah, exactly. It's a form of blasphemy, because look, God is sustaining me the same way He's sustaining a non-Muslim. The same way He's sustaining an animal, a leaf, a piece of grass, a bacteria, a rock.
You are a genetic meat bag with God's energy inside of you. If anything, you are Him. You are connected to Him.
Genetic meat bag.
There's no Him to you. It's you to Him. It's you to Him.
There's no separation.
There's no separation. You are a part of Him. Without His energy, you are nothing. You are not able to.
So I like
exist.
the way that you labeled. You are connected to Him, not Him to you.
Yes.
You know, God does not need you, but you need Him. God is self-sufficient, but that's a beautiful way to put it.
See, and I labeling it is the intention is, and it's how the context of this situation.
Right, and I think when you take ownership of God yourself, you're like, oh, this is my God. Even us as believers, we fall into that trap. We tend to think of God as like someone who's just serving us. We feel so entitled, man, to God's attention and to God's love just for us. It's like He needs to love just me. Why is He giving this person this? This is everybody's God. Everything's God, right? He's the God of everything and everyone.
If there's no God, there's nothing.
Correct.
If His energy's not, there's nothing.
And this is why I think, in order to rid the labels, you have to understand Allah, and that Allah is for everyone and everything. And at that moment when you understand that, you understand that you need to connect with what He has put here.
It's through Allah's mercy that we even exist.
Right.
And that we continue to exist,
right.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah.
I actually I want to end it on this hadith of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That when Allah hates an individual, He calls Jibreel and He says, Jibreel alayhi salam, hate this individual. And then Jibreel will then tell the Malaika, hate this individual. And the Malaika will then go down to the earth, and essentially all of human beings and all of Allah's creation will in turn end up hating this individual. But this is in terms of energy, by the way.
Right.
Because how does Allah interact with us? Does He interact with us directly? Does He interact with us metaphysically? Allahu A'lam, right? In multiple ways. There's no limitation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this hadith in particular goes on to continue to say that when Allah loves a person, He calls Jibreel alayhi salam and He says, love this person, love my abd. And in the end, Jibreel spreads that to the malaika, that Allah loves this person, I love this person, you shall, and then to the rest of mankind and all of humanity. Don't box yourself into Allah is this, Allah is that. Islam is this way, Islam is that way. Don't think like a fundamentalist.
Right.
Allah's love is eternal. Allah's energy is eternal. Allah's rahmah is eternal. When you believe that, you don't need to go and see it. You'll feel it.
You feel it.
It's just as is.
It's that energy. It's deeper than consciousness. It's deeper than these labels that we are, as humans, that we place on things to understand the world, that we still don't have. We have zero understanding of.
But by the way, we're
Right.
we're 3D. We're only limited to the things of way of thinking of 3D.
Yes.
We can't even put into idea what is 4D. Like we can't even put
Let
into
alone Allah subhanahu
like that's beyond us. Like we could sit here and try to figure it out, but that's truly beyond us.
So Allahu alam. But
Yeah.
do you have anything more to add?
No,
Please, please.
I think this is you reminded me from a quote from Star Wars, where
May the force be with you.
the quote is only Sith deal in absolutes, right? And obviously, anyone who knows Star Wars also knows it was heavily inspired by Islamic metaphysics, especially Sufism. So I always take that saying and I say only Shaitan deals in absolutes. Only Shaitan tells, I am better than him. Right? I'm made of fire, he's made of clay. I'm better than him. Only Shaitan tries to misguide in absolutes.
SubhanAllah.
Human beings that are rationally connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always think beyond the label.
May, Biznah ta'ala, may we be among the people who extrapolate beyond labels, who push ourselves and set the standard for humanity, for it to rise above this immorality,
Right.
this ill thought process, this parasitic thought process that is deeply rooted within our society as a whole. Wallahu a'lam. So
Let's end it at that.
let's end it at that. So thank you guys once again for joining us on another episode of Ummah and Exile. Please join us next time, Monday, Wednesdays. Like, follow, subscribe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.